All right. I think we're good enough to go. If we need to close the door back there, we can, just to ensure we have conditions for optimal listening in the chambers. And if you all don't mind, Chief Moyer, of course, introduce the folks on your either side of you, and we'll get started.
Absolutely. Good morning, Chairman Newcomb, Commissioners. Mike Moyer, Fire Chief. I'm joined by Fire Marshal Ray Lane, Wildfire Mitigation Coordinator Bobby Clausen, Austin O'Brien with State Farm, Patrick Brownfield, and Evan Molyneux with Hub International. We also have several partners in the audience from TAWPC, Teton Area Wildfire Protection Coalition. Katie's here from State Farm, and Bridger Teton National Forest representation and neighborhood ambassadors as well. Thank you for inviting us to present this morning. Our purpose for this workshop is to address a growing challenge that affects more and more homeowners in Teton County, the intersection of wildfire risk and insurance availability. Over the past several years, catastrophic wildfire events have reshaped the insurance landscape. Across the West and increasingly here in Wyoming, trends show a sharp increase in the number of homeowners facing policy cancellations, non-renewals, and steep premium increases in wildfire-prone areas. These changes stem from escalating wildfire loss and national and regional risk modeling. The reality is clear. Wildfire severity and frequency are reshaping our insurance markets. So what can we do at the local level? While insurance markets are regulated at the state level, we do have influence through building practices, land use decisions, and community scale mitigation efforts. The insurance industry has been clear. While parcel by parcel efforts are very important, they are not enough. To restore confidence, stabilize insurance markets, and keep carriers in wildfire-prone areas, we need broad, verifiable wildfire mitigation at the community scale. Moving beyond the individual defensible space, home hardening, to coordinated neighborhood and community-wide strategies. Our goal is ambitious but essential, and that's to create a future where our community can coexist with wildfire without catastrophic loss. Our challenge is not to eliminate fire, but to manage exposure so it doesn't inevitably result in destruction. That means prioritizing the most impactful mitigations. Today we'll just change the slide, and we'll cover 4 key areas. Chief Lane's going to speak to our local wildfire risk. Let's jump one more. Our insurance partners will provide insurance industry insights, what's driving market changes, and what insurers look for in risk reduction. Then Bobby will speak to community scale risk reduction and our local projects and initiatives. And then finally, opportunities for additional impact. I mentioned 4 key areas. We have 5 on the slide. I apologize for that. So our community scale efforts are reflected in the graphic on the slide, as well as the handout that we gave you, which just describes the components that make up a wildfire adapted community. Examples of programs and activities that we have been undertaking to reduce our risk. Those include prevention, homeowner mitigations, landscape fuels treatments, robust fire response, policy codes, partnerships, evacuation planning, critical infrastructure protection like our senior center and our hospital, and then just as important, business and community planning. So thanks for your attention and commitment to this issue, and we'll dive in.
All right. Commissioners, thank you. My name is Raymond Lane, Fire Marshal for Jacksonville Fire and EMS. So we're going to talk about a little bit of, not going to be a full history lesson here, but kind of how we kind of got to where we are today with this issue. So the most devastating wildfires in history have all happened within the last 10 years, some of them sooner than that. So we're seeing extreme fire behavior for these fires, and it's kind of prompted a change in how we've, responded and how we understand how these wildfires are kind of happening now. So this has led to a number of resources that have been created to kind of help better understand what the current risk is, because it's different than it was 20 years ago. So this is wildfirerisk.org, which you see up on the screen here. This is a free resource that you can basically type your type your address in or your zip code in, and it'll kind of give you kind of an understanding of what your wildfire risk is. And this is a free resource that the public can go on. So there's a lot of these type of resources being created. So the main difference and why I guess, and I'll simplify it a little bit, of why fires are a little bit different than they used to be, is you don't need to be near wildland fuels now to be exposed to the wildfire risk. So that's one thing we're learning with these extreme wind events during these fires is kind of what's driving a lot of this. So this slide is a great example of how one way that wildfires in the wildland kind of become fires into the community. The most important thing to understand is every fire is different, so this is just one example of how that could happen. The biggest thing to understand is it doesn't exactly take this path every time. There's many different situations that could happen. This is just a good example of, vegetation to vegetation fires out in the wildlands are generally okay. Then you can progress to vegetation to structure, and then structure to structure inside of a community, and that's when we're seeing these devastating fires. So on the topic of embers, so this is another free resource provided by the U.S. Fire Administration. The blue circle you see is the building we are sitting in. And as you can see, basically the entirety of the town, for example, is in what they're calling an ember zone. And these gauges you see on the left are kind of tell you how close you are to the actual wildland at whatever location you kind of put in. Just driving home that factor that you don't need to be next to the wildlands to have wildfire exposure. The other biggest thing you'll see here, the gauge that's most in the extreme is the structure density. So just like any other situation where we have multiple structure fires, whether that's from ember or anything else for that matter, most communities, ours included, is not going to have the resources to handle multiple structures on fire. So that's why we have the WUI code. That's why we put everything in the town and the county into the WUI code, so that kind of, one day, 20 to 40 years from now, it won't matter that we're in this ember zone. These structures we built to withstand the ember shower that will happen. So kind of negating that risk is the hope there. And then with that, I'm going to turn it over to our insurance partners to talk about some insurance industry insights.
And please go ahead and restate your name for the record.
Certainly, thank you. Evan Molyneux. I'm with Hub Insurance here locally. I've been a resident of Teton County for 30 years, and I've worked in the insurance industry for 25 of those years. I'm just going to try and give you a little background into how an insurance company underwriter kind of evaluates a risk in today's world. So the first thing that the industry is, and this started over a couple of years ago, they have started using third-party wildfire mapping that is largely AI-driven, and these third parties are Red Zone or Core Logics. Those are two of the big players in the industry, and typically you'll be able to type in an address, and then from the mapping you'll get a wildfire mapping score. And that score is based largely on topography and also vegetation. Those are the two big factors. So if your home, for example, is on the side of a hill, that would be a negative because we know that fire burns uphill. And if it has, vegetation, et cetera, these are also negatives.
But it doesn't take into account whether it's a hardened structure.
Well, secondary to that, the underwriter will then ask questions about the home. And the first question they ask is, what kind of roof does it have? If it's wood shake, that's problematic.
Risk assessment is multi-layer.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So These days, most carriers, certainly that we deal with, do not want to write anything with a wood shake roof. That's kind of a deal breaker, unless the roof is fairly new. You know, we can get one or two carriers that maybe consider it. Some of the other questions, the traditional questions they would ask are, what is the distance to the fire station, and is there a water source within 1,000 feet? So we've seen these changes happening over the last few years. Traditionally, the industry tried to predict future losses from prior losses. That is going away. With AI, they're really now trying to predict the future. And this is kind of the modeling that the modern day underwriting practices for the most part. So just to give you all a little bit of background on, you know, behind the scenes, how this tends to work. So these are new, you know, this is kind of a new world we're living in, you know, data-driven, AI-driven, et cetera, and it's more and more, and I you know, collaborate with the fire department and the Forest Service through TAWPC, and I've been a contributor, as we all have, for a number of years. And for me, it's really become all about educating the homeowner and just kind of, you know, changing the conversation to, you know, let's talk about protecting your property and how do we go about doing that, and how do we best harden your home from a wildfire, and kind of changing the conversation and the dynamic a little bit. And I'm really proud of, I think, the collective work that a lot of people in this room have done over the last several years to kind of jumpstart that education process. And it's certainly, these are conversations I have every day with our clients, quite simply. So I think I'll just leave it at that, and I'll be happy to address any questions when you're ready.
Well, yeah, just to get to the heart of the matter, what we hear is folks are saying, I'm losing my insurance. And what we haven't heard is, I've been told that I would lose my insurance unless I do this, or unless my whole entire neighborhood collectively does this, and this. And so I think that's really getting at why we're here, because I thought the Chief Moyer sent some resources, but in particular, the state of insurance for wildfires was excellent, and really just put it out on the line. Like, we're not going to solve this problem with government top-down regulating the insurance industry. That just gets us into trouble. Happened in California, insurance companies just say, I can't. There's a number of reasons in there, but the short of it is we're pulling out because we can't both meet these regulations and assess the premiums that we need to manage the risk. It has to be bottom up. We have to have the neighborhoods have to be hardened, and the paper makes a point that it's a collective action. One property owner can harden their property if everybody around them doesn't. And so that's what I'm trying to get at, is rather than folks coming in and telling us, I'm losing my insurance, I can't sell my home, the assessor's here, my property has no value anymore, we're not hearing, if I do this and this and this and this, then I actually have three options for insurance in the competitive insurance market, which is what we want.
Sure.
Commissioner Carlman.
Thank you, Chair Newcomb. Yeah, indeed, we've had some pretty compelling testimony. Mr. Wire from Moran came to us with concerns about not being able to maybe resell his home, and then we had a letter from a homeowner down at Deer Drive, south of Hoback, and a little different from Chair Newcomb's. Who did that?
You can go ahead and take it.
Just my spouse. I think the letter writer from down by Deer Drive sort of presented himself as having done everything under the sun that he could do to create defensible space, and he was still getting a null response from the insurance industry, and that puts people in a heck of a tight spot. We want to figure out how we can be helpful.
Commissioner Probst.
At the risk of channeling Joe McCarthy, I want to ask each of you a question. But first, really appreciate Austin, Patrick, Evan. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's great working with you generally. But I'm asked, it's not unusual for somebody to suggest that if we were to repeal our designation of the county as the Wildland Urban Interface, that it would be easier
for you guys to underwrite insurance, and the insurance will be cheaper. And I just want to ask, is that the case?
Yeah, you can go ahead and answer that.
That's a good question. We've gotten that before too, and in my experience in a decade and a half insurance, and these guys longer than me, I can't speak for Austin, but I've never heard the WUI brought up by any underwriter, any insurance carrier at all. They go solely nowadays, like Evan was talking about, by wildfire map scores. So WUI has zero to do with it. Even before it was designated WUI, they had a wildfire map score that would say green, yellow, red, all the way out there. So the WUI does not have an impact on any of these insurance carriers.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to follow up? Let's let Austin follow up, and then we'll get to you, Commissioner Gardner.
Austin O'Brien with State Farm. I'll echo what Patrick said. In my experience in talking with multiple different insurers in the area, I haven't heard that come up at all. Everyone kind of seems to do their own proprietary information when mapping.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really following up on the comments that the chair made, we sit here trying to represent the people of our county, and when we're confronted with problems like my property is not worth anything anymore, that's something that echoes in my head as I try to sleep at night. I live in Game Creek. I'm not far removed from the problems that some of these folks are talking about, but I'm an empathetic person and really pride myself in being able to put myself in other people's shoes, and it freaked me out when I heard that a sale went through and then had to be reversed because of insurance reasons. So I think for me, it's a problem we have to solve. It's not just something that keeps me up at night, but it's something that could destroy somebody's life and the biggest investment that they make. So what I've heard is that we've got a great program that the county sponsors, and that the fire department comes out to folks' property like mine and teaches us how to harden our homes, and good property owners take that advice and get the chainsaws out and do the work, or pay somebody to do it, however it goes. And I'm proud of that program. I think it's a great program. But what I'm hearing y'all say, and what I'm hearing them say, is that no matter what a single individual homeowner does to harden their home, it's not going to make a lick of difference to an insurance company. And I understand that and appreciate it. But what I have heard is that community efforts will move that needle. So can you help me understand what a community effort looks like? What is that like? I really want to understand for your definition of that from an insurance perspective, because it's important that we harden our homes for the protection of our families, obviously. But I want to get really back to the dollars and cents of this thing, which isn't nearly as impactful at the end of the day. But as far as the value of our homes, which is what we're here to try to protect in this today, what do we need to do to check that box? They're looking at you.
No, I mean, I wish it were as simple as checking a box. There are so many variables involved and so many layers, and I don't know what the answer is, quite simply. Which is why I'm more and more like, when I talk to anybody, I take off my insurance hat and I say, you know what, let's forget about the insurance. Let's talk about protecting your property, and what does that look like, and what does being a responsible homeowner in Teton County look like? How do we navigate that? And that's, I'm trying to change the narrative and the conversation that I have with homeowners. And if we can get, because here's what I know: insurance companies, and I don't work for an insurance company. I represent our clients. They tend to paint in broad strokes, okay? And there are a few other variables that go with that. And one that we're seeing more and more of is concentration. So carriers are now looking at small pockets of concentration with these kind of high wind-driven wildfire events that we're seeing. So, for example, if you've got a neighborhood that has 100 homes and you've got one carrier on half of them, that's now a problem for the carrier. So it's a really complex, multi-layered issue that we're dealing with here. And, the more neighborhoods, anything we can do to get people to protect their property and to protect their neighborhoods is a good thing. And, we had a workshop recently with a group of landscapers and property managers trying to educate these people, to get them on board and kind of understand, some of the issues here as it relates to mitigation and protecting the property and all of it. But we have worked, all the parties at TAWPC. We have these conversations all the time. And, how do we get community engagement, right? How do we get ambassadors that represent their HOAs and their neighborhoods to get involved, become education conduits for their neighbors? It kind of starts there, and you kind of build this community effort, hopefully, over time. I am hopeful, and there's a pilot program going on right now with, I think it's the Association of Fire Chiefs. They are doing kind of a pilot project where they're collecting individual data from homes and finding a way to share that with industry. So that's, this is kind of a work in progress and very early stages. So, who knows where we'll be 3-5 years from now as far as that goes. But again, the industry tends to paint in pretty broad strokes, and companies like Red Zone and CoreLogix that provide the wildfire mapping to the industry, they seem open to collecting that data and kind of, I think there's some flexibility there. But, when you get that wildfire score, it's that score. And, the topography, we can't change the topography, but we can change the vegetation. We can change maybe access to water. We can change roofs and all the rest of it. I wish there was a silver bullet answer to your question, quite honestly.
We have a follow-up then, Commissioner Probst.
So the program that I underwent as a homeowner, I exported to a couple of my neighbors. They were excited to partake, and I guess I'm going to go into the world of theoretical. Let's say that my entire neighborhood participated in this program where we all hardened our houses. What I'm sensing is still wouldn't move the needle from an underwriter's perspective. Now, let's take it to the nth degree. Every single homeowner in Teton County hardened their house. Now, we're really dealing in a crazy capital T theoretical, but let's just play that out. Would that still be too fine a brush for an underwriter to recognize and write policies based on the fact that a community really has taken incredible? I know that this is pie in the sky, but I'm trying to at least understand that there is. I think what Mark asked is, what can we do? And if the answer is nothing, then I'd rather just know that right now.
I'll just respond briefly. I think, education is the answer and kind of the way to go. Educating the homeowners on how to protect their property and home hardening and all of it. And we know, history tells us that we will save more homes from wildfire from educating people in advance than investing in equipment and firemen and all the rest of it. So I think that's kind of my canned response at this point.
But there's you can't give me the answer I'm looking for, which is if you do this, then you can protect your community from having no insurance.
I would say industry-wide that if a community engages in significant fuels mitigation, that may help move the needle. Because there's going to be cases where an underwriter looks at an individual property and says, if you do these things, your house specifically might be okay, and then there's areas where they're like, no one currently is okay, or it's going to be at an incredibly high premium. But if those communities were to engage in a fuels mitigation project on a wide scale, that may help move the needle. That's where I'm kind of seeing in the industry right now.
And wide scale meaning, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but neighborhood?
I would say, yeah, on a subdivision level.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Commissioner Probst?
Thank you. The legislature has delegated to counties, tell me if I'm wrong, primary responsibility for fire suppression, fire mitigation. Probably you can thank your lucky stars. They haven't put us involved. They haven't given us any involvement in insurance. You guys are happy about that, I'm sure. But is there anything, so we're not an insurance body, as you guys know, but is there anything that maybe insurance companies, the fire profession, and counties could do to improve any policies in either from the Department of Insurance or from the legislature that would help our residents with this, or is it kind of beyond a policy fix?
Patrick, I don't have a good answer for that, but and I don't know what the legislature is capable of having everyone do. Right. So I would say the biggest thing for the insurance brokers or carriers that we work with, we're a broker, was when the wood roof ban went in. I mean, an easy example, and this is high level problems for someone, but there was a sale last week, 2 weeks ago at the Pines, 5-year-old Class B wood roof, and he negotiated, a significant 6-figure number to get it replaced, brand new roof basically, which must have slid right under the timing. And that's what we're seeing. A lot of, realtors are freaking out again, or for the first time about, I can't sell something in Crescent H, and they really want to, of course. So that's kind of what we're saying. I guess my answer to that is the best thing we've done is the wood roof, and we can't tell people to cut their limbs 10 feet back from all sides of their house and change all their roofs. But one thing, if you're not familiar with the stat, and this is where the carriers kind of look at their actuarial tables and things like that, 90% of structure loss in a wildfire is from ember showers. So that's where they're really looking. Ember-resistant vents are now being required by a lot of carriers, and I won't go into all those different things. But I don't know what the legislature can do beyond what the county can do for.
Yeah, the staff report notes, and it was also in that State of Insurance article, state lawmakers may consider a fair access to insurance requirements. FAIR plan, which provides property coverage when traditional insurance is unavailable. For example, Colorado's FAIR plan offers coverage for properties at extreme natural disaster risk. These programs serve as a last resort after all other insurance options are exhausted.
Just to add on to what Patrick was, to address your question a little further, I think the regulatory environment here in the state of Wyoming is actually very, very good. Carriers like writing business here because it's a good environment. To piggyback on that, what we're seeing in the industry are the entry of what we call non-admitted carriers into the marketplace. So a non-admitted carrier being those carriers that do not have to jump through the regulatory hoops with the state. So they're able to come in and essentially charge what they think is a fair rate given the risk. So we're seeing this is a trend, a growing trend that we're seeing. So you've got traditional carriers like Chubb, Pure, Cincinnati, et cetera, are having these non-admitted divisions now come into places like Teton County, and they're stepping in to help fill some of the void. And we love seeing that. Obviously, the woodshake roof is still an issue for those carriers, but and there are some, the non-admitted carrier they charge what they think is a fair rate, but there's also a flip side to that coin. You know, if you're dealing with maybe not the best carrier in the world, you know, in the event of a loss, they could walk away potentially. So, you know, there is a caveat there, but I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I had a hard time understanding who and what a non-admitted carrier is, reading that state of the insurance for wildfires. Like, there's an insurance company that has to be quite clear about yourself, and then there's somebody else that somehow sort of skirts the regulatory regimen that you guys need to abide by, and still can call themselves an insurance company.
So those non-admitted carriers, or maybe you've heard of surplus lines. There's a great little Investopedia link I send to people to explain what it is. So when the admitted carriers say no, 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 that's our option to go there. And I don't know how those things are regulated, but they put a consortium of investment together and decide to cover. We've got one new carrier that's covering Florida and California only. So I mean, they're looking for high premiums, high risk kind of thing. And there's one other thing I was going to add that might come back to me.
Thank you. Kind of two slightly different thoughts that I'm having. One, when it comes to HOAs and their participation, presumably some of the HOAs, depending on where you are, also have structures that the HOA owns. And I guess kind of at a high level, just curious if HOAs are having problems getting insurance also, as well as individual homeowners, and how, I know we're already leveraging that, so I see a nod, so I'll take that as yes. Kind of my second question, as we think about opportunities to maximize the goals and the steps that we know can take to reduce the risk, is there yet, like when we look at these risk scores or the mapping, a way for us to create kind of the clearinghouse of like, we have verified that like this area is now done, and is more like to help an insurance company know that like there's some sort of like local certification that yes, the things the homeowner said have happened, or just be able to present more bulk data, which could also help us as we work through this list, prioritize any funding or work we would work on with neighborhoods to like, hey, our goal is to get like this high risk zone done by this year, and just try to be functional on our end, since I think we can't fully change what large insurance corporations are going to do, but create it where it's really easy to find that out here, and then also create the peer pressure of like, hey, everybody in the neighborhood but your house did it. Can you get on board with doing so, and like use the HOAs to kind of help push that as well?
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd just point out we do have several more slides that would address some of this as far as the mitigations.
Let's try that.
We could hit some of those, and then we can circle back to some of the same questions in light of that. I think it's important to note that by us as a community being forward-leaning, I believe from what I'm reading and hearing, that makes us more desirable for the companies versus a community that's doing nothing. And while it may appear that codes and WUI zones may be a detriment, I think actually it shows an insurer that we're taking it seriously, we're leaning in, and we're reducing risk for them. And we certainly have, I would assume we have a community where insurers would prefer to be insuring our homes and our communities. But if that works out for you guys, we'll hit a few more slides, tell you a little more about what the mitigations that are taking place, and go from there.
Good morning, Bobby Clausen, Jacksonville Fire EMS. I have some prepared notes, so please be patient with me while I edit them as I speak to you to meet the conversation. I guess while we wait for the insurance industry to catch up and use community-wide action in their metrics, we still need to reduce our risk, right? That needs to happen irregardless of insurability. And Teton Area Wildfire Protection Coalition recognized this more than 2 decades ago when they formed. They bring partners together to work collectively and individually on fuels reduction projects and public education, and we can celebrate things like the Forest Service's Teton to Snake program, weed and pest doing cheatgrass management, the Conservation District doing homeowner incentive programs like Commissioner Gardner brought up, and other actions that we have listed on the slide up here. But it's really going to take more action on the private lands to actually have truly impactful work done at scale. Right now, TAWPC is focused on implementing action items from the 2024 Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Early detection AI cameras and home assessment software have been presented to this board, while we simultaneously have been working to advance critical infrastructure hardening, public outreach campaigns, roadside vegetation management, and other mitigation priorities. With residents acting on home hardening and defensible space recommendations from this plan, we will be closer to achieving a fire-adapted community. Jacksonville Fire EMS was also an early adopter of the Wildland Urban Interface Code. We did that in 2008. We appreciate this board's continued commitment to adopting the most current code cycle every 3 years. But we also want to recognize the collaboration of other Teton County departments. Parks and Rec, the Library, and the Office of Innovation and Engagement are all partnering with us on important initiatives like improving the First 5 Feet program around county buildings and helping design a wildfire action booklet for homeowners.
All right, so some of the opportunities that we have kind of for the future and how to help this, some of them will address some of the kind of the questions that Commissioner Macker had. So kind of our first one, so as we always do in Fire EMS, we try to look at all the research and all these fires that happen and try to implement programs that can make some real difference. So kind of the one thing that has had success is what they call a First 5 Feet program. So funding and education on keeping the zone from your structure 5 feet out, zero combustibles or as limited combustible as possible, has almost nearly doubles, as the slide says, your structure's property survivability in a wildfire. So we really try to keep that. That's an opportunity that we have here. That's a program that we could put in place, and I have a couple other more opportunities just to kind of give you guys a kind of what's out there and what's possible. So this slide speaks to Commissioner Macker's kind of question on that a little bit. So basically, with limited funding opportunities and mitigation opportunities that we have, one is a county and a fire department and staffing and so on. The resources that we do have, we really need to focus those as much as we possibly can to make, for lack of a better term, to get the most bang for our buck. So there is new modeling softwares out there. Coincidentally, basically the same models that the insurance companies are using, these third parties, that can map the pathways of fire would come into our community. So essentially, it's a little hard to see, but you see those different color blocks and structures there. And this example is basically an AI work plan that's put together, from a third party that will look at and model how the fire will come into our community, and then give us basically sections, or what they call work units, of areas where if we spend all of our time and energy and resources to mitigate those areas, we'll have a certain amount of impact. And that is, when it comes to, trying to do these mitigation efforts, we really try to use SATA, data and science, SATA, which I just created, to really get the most for our money. So, this is an opportunity that this technology didn't exist 3 years ago, in fact. So this is how fast this kind of work is kind of coming out. So yeah, another opportunity here that we could potentially explore.
Mr. Gardner.
Quick question. If we were to say, I heard you say limited funding, and that now all of a sudden I have agency again. So let's say you had $10 million. Could you make a meaningful difference with that kind of funding, given this kind of software and this kind of, could you create a model, a plan, given that kind of funding to move us to a better place as far as mitigation?
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioner Gardner, thank you for the question, and the fire chief will kick me if I say anything I shouldn't. But I believe that if with that theoretical type of funds, with a program like this, based on the latest data and those models, I think we could focus on the most vulnerable pathways into the community, which I think we can make some pretty good headway. Now, with that being said, we are seeing fire behavior now that we have never seen before. Every year it feels like there is another ridiculous, crazy fire event that no one in the fire service or insurance industry, for that matter, expected to happen. So obviously there's a big caveat to that. But I think with focused mitigation efforts, I think we could have a pretty good chance at definitely making a real impact on when wildfire comes to this community to have a difference. But we need that data. We need the latest data, and we need to stay up on the research in order to make that happen. It's a very new game we're playing, unfortunately.
Commissioner Probst.
Really appreciate your work on this. At the risk of Jody breaking my arm, could we ask if a majority of the colleagues here agree? As we go into budget, could we ask you guys to bring us maybe 3 levels of fire mitigation? I'm particularly worried about the House cutting $13 million out of the cheatgrass management program, and that's a problem for us. But I'd love to see like an aggressive, an intermediate, and a status quo approach so that if funding allows, we can see what would happen with putting more county funds into our fuels management program. Is that a heads up?
Absolutely.
That's a heads up in part. Thank you, Chair Newcomb.
And
yes.
I was joking about Jody breaking my arm. She doesn't do that.
I was reading body language from our panel, and I think the answer was that you could respond at that level of 3 different options for us, and that'd be great.
Yeah, it might come up in the rest of the presentation. The one thing, of course, that's on my mind is, I have a property smack in the WUI up on Heck of a Hill. I would benefit greatly from a bunch of taxpayers paying into this fund, helping me mitigate my property. Aren't they going to be a little bit resentful? I want to kind of think about those ins and outs.
Chair Newcomb, Commissioners, Jody Pond. I just wanted to ask about the opportunities for grants related to fuel mitigation. I know I lived in a community that became fire-wise by utilizing the federal grants that are available, and I think we should, obviously you guys are looking at those types of things, but not just county general fund, but federal grants are available.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if we were going to get to that as we move through the presentation.
Thank you for your question, Ms. Pond. I'll give an example right now. We are looking to see if a healthy fuels reduction grant will be available through Wyoming State Forestry this spring. These grants are $250,000. We're looking at a neighborhood on Fall Creek Road that has 76 parcels. $250,000 might help us mitigate 30 acres in part of the road. So there are grants available, and we're seeking multiple opportunities to acquire these grants and administer them, but it's not at the scale that we need and not at the frequency to get work done quickly.
Thank you. This is maybe a question, Jody, for you to take to Keith, and not something that we would act on this year, but would be helpful to know as we think about how we would shape programs, is what it would take to be able to have a SPET ballot that would go for that, like which items within the plans that we would do, if we don't already know the answer, that could qualify for that type of funding, as we think about that in a few years when that's coming up, just so that as we structure it, if there's a way of structuring the program now, that this component of it could really be eligible and qualify. Because I think that's one that our community would likely vote for and would maybe share, to Commissioner Newcomb's point, share in how we're paying for it a little bit differently.
So I'll jump into next opportunity, which actually is this is kind of a great segue of a way we can get work done, with kind of not contractors. So there are various staffing models used across the Intermountain West that other resort communities kind of use, and basically they have their own seasonal or their own fuels crews. So that is basically, when I say that, these are wildland firefighters that know how to use chainsaws and all that stuff, and they work locally or regionally. And in the off season, when they're not off fighting fires elsewhere, they can do that work for us. So, obviously it wouldn't be a huge thing, and we're talking about staff here, just so I'm clear. But this would just be, a program where locally, when they have fire season, when we are in fire season, they'll be here, they'll be able to support that mission. When we're on our off season, if they're not deployed, for example, on other fires helping regionally or nationally, which has been a proven kind of revenue resource as well. We can use them to do those fuels mitigation projects to kind of keep them working kind of year round. Or some version of that. There's lots of different ways to do that. But there's a number of communities, especially resort communities, that have kind of used this to kind of get more done, and then kind of support the wildfire mission when we need it. When we need guys here, they're here. And then when we don't need them, or we don't have anything going on, or there's fires regionally or nationally, they can also deploy to those, get the experience, help the other, the rest of the nation, and kind of there's a little bit of revenue there as well. So another opportunity that we could look at for stuff like this.
So that would live with your department.
Yeah.
You're going to get kicked.
Yeah, Chairman Newcomb, yes, there's different models. Some are shared models between state and local and federal. We currently participate with our federal partners on a regular basis with providing firefighters to support their efforts or to join one of their crews. And so there's a number of different options and models. A local model would be based out of the department here. We see that a number of our resort community partners across the region have a program like that where they work seasonally for the fire department in a firefighter / fuels mitigation role.
That's a quick question. Yeah. Is fuels mitigation kind of like painting the Golden Gate Bridge? Like, you're never finished. As soon as you finish, you're starting over.
How do you know? Have you painted the Golden Gate Bridge?
I've read.
Chairman, if it's okay, may I ask Dave from Forest Service to answer that, if Dave is willing to speak to that? I just add that because the Teton the Snake program, other programs, fuels work that's been done in the valley for many, many years, over decades, and I think Dave could speak to how that works.
Yeah, good afternoon. Dave Wilkins, I'm the Zone Fire Management Officer, Bridger Teton National Forest. So to answer your question about fuels mitigation work, yes, that is something that is always ongoing. We call them maintenance treatments. So if there's been a long period of time between treatments, obviously you have to go in and do a much more robust initial entry. That could be accomplished through prescribed fire or mechanical thinning, fuels reduction. And then once that is accomplished, then we're able to go in intermittently on maybe a 10 to 20-year basis, depending on the fuel type, the vegetation. A brush component would need servicing at a different interval than a timber stand would. So, yes, it's never ending. We've been working on the Teton to Snake fuels reduction project for almost a decade now here. And, by the time we complete that, we're going to be looking at kind of coming back around and starting to fill in areas that we missed the first time, and then doing subsequent treatments to be able to maintain the efficacy of those treatments moving forward. And then obviously with, just changing conditions out there as well, whether it's climate change or global warming, et cetera, we're seeing more severe fire intensity, which then in effect, requires even more aggressive fuels treatments to really make a difference out there. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
And Mr. Wilkins, as long as you're at the mic, do you want to quickly tell us about the Snow King project that will be undertaken here in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so we have several projects that we're looking to step into here as fuel treatment in the Wildland Urban Interface, where the forest meets private and the local community. So up on Josie's Ridge, we have a project up on Snow King that we're looking to be implementing in the next couple of years here. We're working through the NEPA process for that, the steps that we need to take on the federal side for any actions that we're taking on federal land to make sure that those actions don't have severe negative impacts to, other environmental concerns. So we are moving there. We are also looking at Cache Creek, some treatments up in Cache, and also Shadow Mountain up along Lost Creek subdivision, up north along Shadow. There's some treatments that we're looking at there. Teton to Snakes continuing to march along, and obviously there was several areas that were, that we left out on the first edition, if you will, or version of Teton to Snake that we'll be looking to follow up on. So, yeah, it's basically 360 degrees right around Jackson. I mean, we're right in the center of the national forest and the national park system, and so, we're trying to be strategic to where some of the modeling or some of the science drives us to take action, because as you heard, 30 acres for $250,000, I mean, it can be pretty insurmountable when you really think about the money that could be invested. And that's another reason why we do look at, wildfire as it plays its natural role on the landscape, to where we can take opportunities, if you will, for having the ecosystem reset itself in a natural way, and where there's opportunities for that, we definitely take advantage of it. And then one final thing is we will, Teton to Snake, we do have some prescribed burning. That's another tool in our toolbox for accomplishing some of those fuels reductions. So Munger Mountain, you probably saw us burning down there last year, and we'll be looking to continue that here this coming spring.
Chair, real quick, just 20 seconds. $250,000 on a 30-acre treatment sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But I'm reminded an ounce of prevention versus a pound of intervention. I mean, what could be on those 30 acres? What's the cost of losing 30 acres of structures? That's why we're here, and that's why I think what I'm hearing from the insurance folks is right. These kind of treatments do make a difference, and the bigger they are, the more impactful they are, the more impactful they'll be for the underwriters. So really appreciate the time today to dig into this and really wrap our minds around the enormity of the problem. And I think given the scale of the problem, the solution is going to have to be pretty big too. So that's my number one takeaway from this today.
Yeah, Chief, did you have more slides?
I think I have 3 more, if you'll bear with me. The last opportunity, we'll bring it back to the insurance world. So there's 2 kind of programs out there that insurance companies do recognize when it comes to work that has been done, but there's limitations to those. So FireWise is it's basically a national program that focuses on subdivision level communities or community treatments, and but has a limited impact on insurance itself. Where the other one on the right there, Wildfire Prepared, is a program of the Insurance and Business. Someone help me out.
Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety.
Yes, thank you. The insurance, that one, because we love our acronyms. So that one is. It's a newer program. 5 states have adopted it in the West here, but essentially what that does is your home, and any of these insurance guys can possibly correct me, but your home basically receives a certification after doing a certain amount of work, and the states, if they've adopted this, basically require the insurance companies to kind of recognize those mitigations, but again, this has been done at the state level in those states, so there has been some success with that, but again, that would come from a state level. So there's just an opportunity there for some support, perhaps.
Well, our state is just really responsive these days, so we should be able to get something done right away.
All right, that's all the slides we've got, and we can certainly take other questions. I'll just point out the summary bullets here, just, that as we've heard, wildfire severity and frequencies reshaping the markets for insurance, verifiable community scale mitigation is critical to protecting our community, most important, and then stabilizing the insurance markets. And we need to act on our CWPP. And then for us, it's prioritizing those most impactful mitigations. And that's where we're paying a lot of attention to the insurance industry and looking for information from them to say, where do we get the most bang for our buck, along with just, those priorities for life safety and property preservation as well.
So I'm just going to quickly go back to the paper, the state of insurance, and I'm going to go down to the bottom and go through a few of the items in black, possible solutions, because we're doing some of them. We can kind of just check the boxes and then look at ones that we could do a little bit more on. Improve land use planning. We have done some land use planning around recognizing the WUI and requiring certain methods of construction, so fire-hardened buildings. Provide assistance for strategic vegetation management. We do a bit of that, but probably could look at ways to do more. I think that's what this board is trying to dig into when we start thinking about funding. Increase adoption of utility wildfire mitigation plans. That's something that I thought about. I haven't really talked to LVE, and they're not here at the table, but we might want to touch base with them and get a better understanding of what they're thinking about when they do have lines running through the WUI and a number of places, the high-tier WUI. Possible solutions also include coordinate mitigation among federal agencies. I think we're doing a really good job of that. Encourage safe new construction. We are doing a pretty good job of that. Retrofit existing construction. That's, again, where we get into this challenge of folks facing the immediate cost of retrofitting their existing construction and the long-term cost of perhaps losing their insurance or not being able to get new insurance if the property sells. So that's a hard one to wrap our heads around, but I think with a lot of public education, a lot of awareness, and we might be able to do more there. And then National Wildfire Resilience Certification Program. That sounds a lot like what you just talked about with the Wildfire Prepared, something that we can look at the state level. And then we go down the list again. We have invest in tools for community risk assessment and management. This is focusing on the data and trying to really make sure that the data is giving us the clear story, telling us the story that we need to properly assess risk and put that into the models. Multi-layered, start at high level, but then go down property by property. What are we seeing on the ground, and putting that into the probability of catastrophe. Provide a framework and resources for continuous evaluation. I think we are developing that. And then make mitigation actions visible to insurers. So that's what we're talking about today. So I think we're on the right track, and I think we just need to keep doing as much as we can and always trying to identify funding opportunities and hoping that the legislature doesn't continue taking away funding opportunities, like, what did you say, $13 million from a cheatgrass treatment program? And I think that was a bit of cheatgrass that was burning on the hillside a couple summers ago, for sure, when a balloon got caught in the electric wires. It could have been my kid's balloon, but I don't think it was.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
It was a celebratory balloon from a business on the south side of Highway 89 near the new car wash station. Okay. Anyhow, Mylar caught the thing, but my only contribution is that these slides are really valuable, and I'd love to get them in wider circulation. And if you could kindly send them to commissioners at Teton County WY.gov, then we can circulate them to others and just get this news moving. I also did a little back of the envelope chicken scratch. If $250,000 gets you 30 acres, that's $1 million gets you 120 acres, and if we have 75,000 acres of private land, which we have more than that, but I just used that number. They're not all the same, but we're at $625 million to make it work. On the other hand, the defensible space, the first 5 feet, the 10-foot program, that's homeowner, driven, and the unit cost there is way lower if you've got informed, educated motivated homeowners with help from neighbors or gardening companies. We could do a lot of that stuff at a very low unit cost. So as you all highlighted, public education is huge. It's education that leads to action, of course. It's not just reading a beautiful report. Read it and then do something. So thanks for your work.
Real quick.
Mr. Gardner.
$625 million, that's, but I think it does highlight something that I wanted to suggest, that is, we had a $10 million water quality SPET fund get passed, highest passing rate that we've ever seen. And I think what would have made that better would have been a mechanism by which we determine the priority of the spending of those funds before they started accruing. So I think one thing that would be nice for me, at least, would be, as part of your planning, how are you going to prioritize the funds? What mechanisms are you going to use to prioritize mitigation efforts by zone? And I think, Ray, what you pointed out earlier, the AI kind of generated, that gives you a really good head start. But, understanding where we're going to get the most bang for our buck, recognizing we're not raising $625 million. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think we better wrap it up. I hear stomachs growling. Thank you very much, all of you. Yes, please, Evan.
Yeah, just one last comment to piggyback on Commissioner Carlman. One of the things that we see all the time in doing this work is are the number of HOA CCRs that were written 35 years ago that don't allow for simple tree removal from a homeowner's property, and this has been part of the battle that we've been dealing with for years and years and years. So I just wanted to mention that to you. Thank you.
That must be part of our awareness campaign, our education campaign. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Certainly welcome to.
A comment on the Teton Conservation District. People probably know Rob Scory. He works closely with everybody.
Rob just walked in.
Perfect timing.
Well, I've been around with him, and he's educated homeowners, and everyone I've sent them to, they've done everything he asked plus more. So, that's a great program, and people don't know about it, but when they take advantage of it, it's fantastic. So that's it.
Good. And that's great that Rob said they'll pay for half of that $625 million price tag. Rob, that's great. Thank you.
Without raising property taxes.
Katie, do you want to make comments?
Katie? Yeah,
you have
please.
to come up to a mic.
Please do.
I know we're going to run.
Mike, Katie, come up to a mic, please.
Come up to a mic and state your name.
Tell us your name.
Trying not to kick anyone out of a seat.
We know you well. Thank you.
Chair Newcomb, Board, Katie Murphy. I'm with State Farm, but not speaking on behalf of State Farm and not authorized to represent State Farm in the context of a conversation specific to this particular topic, but as an industry observer and citizen of the county of 20 plus years, I think there are so many opportunities we need to grab now and not delay, because the insurance industry as a whole is not interested in what you are going to do. They are interested in what you have done and what is the current state, not what is going to look like in 2 years or 3 years or 5 or 10. So I think taking the bull by the horns now is necessary, prudent, and very important for the success of our community going forward, from an insurance perspective, but also from the perspective of we don't want to lose homes, we don't want to lose families. This is a big deal, and the urgency behind this is not coming from, I think, anyone raising their hand and going, hey, we need something to do. But wildfires are happening more frequently, more severely, and they're not asking anyone's permission. A fire is going to come when it's going to come. So I am so thrilled that the community is putting eyes on this closely and from a perspective of high concern. I also think as a citizen, we do town cleanup. We can very much put into effect, I think, as a community, something that makes it easy for homeowners to mitigate on their own, similar to a town, we're not cleaning up clowns, I know that, town cleanup situation where, I mean, if you drive around town today, you will see homes with huge fir boughs hanging onto the roof. I mean, in town, in the county everywhere. If we had a means by which homeowners could dispose of that outside of like the once a year at the dump, I think we just have a lot of avenues that we can make this happen through those education pieces, through the work of TAWPC, which has been incredible, and see better success. And to Natalia, your point, it's HOAs are included, business communities are included, like this is not specific to just personal private residences. This is every single structure in the valley. So businesses need to be aware, homeowners need to be aware, associations need to be aware. Commissioner Gardner, to your question, what is an underwriter going to do? And Commissioner Probst, what would an underwriter do if we check these boxes? We're asking these questions that the answers lie at the uppermost levels of national insurance carriers, and I don't think anyone in this room could really hazard a guess as to what an actuary or an underwriter would say in any particular circumstance, because the folks here in this room don't get to make those decisions. We just get to observe and do our best to try to move forward and encourage folks to make decisions that are prudent and thoughtful and benefit the entire community as a whole. So listening to this meeting, so thankful for all the hard work across the board, and really heartened to know that this is on the forward radar.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I'm sure this isn't the end of it, so.
Far from it.
But for now, let's wrap it up.